Good day. Welcome back to another episode of the Truck Focus podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hannaberry. In our industry, something I think we can all agree on is there's so much to know and comply with in order to be successful, specifically when navigating through the conversation of carrier compliance. And at times it feels like there is an overwhelming amount of information that a carrier and professional driver needs to know. You're also required to know, and you must comply with each day. In today's episode, I'm excited to introduce to you Trevor Nettleton, owner of Freight Rate Transportation Consulting, who's an industry expert in regards to carrier compliance requirements in British Columbia. So prior to owning his consulting company, Trevor was employed with British Columbia's Commercial Vehicle Safety and Enforcement Unit as a carrier safety inspector. Now, Trevor is using his years of training and experience and is focused on helping carriers increase their compliance performance and profits. So you can learn more about Freight Rate Transportation Consulting by visiting www.freightrate.ca. So today's episode, I believe it's going to be a great listen for carriers and professional drivers that are eager to learn more about their compliance requirements, but also interested to learn more about Trevor's journey and how his organization can positively impact you as a person and your company. Well, let's get to it. Friends in the industry, first off, I hope you're having a great day. I'm excited to introduce to our sponsors, ComplianceBox. ComplianceBox, transport compliance made easy. ComplianceBox is an expertly designed, easy to use mobile app that offers electronic inspections that are automatically risk rated to keep your fleet safe and your employees focused. So for some time now, I've been impressed with ComplianceBox as they have improved the way commercial carriers and professional drivers can manage their transportation requirements. So ComplianceBox was created by the team at KCAN Safety Consulting. They've been in the transportation compliance business for over 20 years and are certified by Alberta Transportation to conduct assessment of regulatory compliance NSC audits, as well as new carrier compliance reviews. After years of completing compliance audits on commercial carriers, they've seen areas where carriers commonly struggle. So ComplianceBox was built to address those areas easily and effectively. As transportation compliance experts, they were able to build ComplianceBox in such a way that helps companies achieve a better score on their compliance audit while keeping their user experience front of mind. So with the constant improvements in the works, we're excited to see the continued impact ComplianceBox will have on carriers' operations, on the lives of professional drivers, and ultimately for public safety. So let me ask you this. As a commercial carrier or a professional driver that operates a commercial vehicle that does require a pre-trip inspection to be completed properly before they're driven, and the requirement to maintain those trip inspection reports documentations for a specific period of time, would you not feel more confident knowing you're using ComplianceBox, an expertly designed, easy to use mobile app that offers electronic inspections that are automatically risk rated to keep your fleet safe and your employees focused? I sure do. And I'm very excited about the impact ComplianceBox is having in our industry, and I highly recommend utilizing them, implementing them into your own fleets today. And best of all, their values really do align with ours, and they're dedicated to support our local economy. So ComplianceBox is and always will be designed, developed, and hosted in Canada, which I think is super incredible. So I encourage you to start a free trial, that's right, free trial on this excellent product today. So you can complete your free trial simply by visiting ComplianceBox.ca. And while on the website, check out the top right corner, click on the icon that says start your free trial. Simply include the required information, hit the submit button, and a company representative will be in contact with you right away. So again, ComplianceBox, transport compliance made easy. I highly recommend that you check them out. Simply visit www.compliancebox.ca. Thanks everyone, talk to you soon. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Truck Focus podcast. And Trevor, welcome. Super excited for today's conversation.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just for everyone listening, I really admire Trevor, and I like meeting people in this sense, obviously virtually, but when I can tell that our values align and how we see industry aligns and our desire for carrier success. So I'm super excited
Absolutely.
for today. This is big.
Absolutely.
So why don't you kind of start us off, kind of highlight who you are?
We are very aligned, it's nice to have this opportunity. So I do appreciate that. My name is Trevor Nettleton. Like you said, I am the founder and lead consultant for Freight Rate Transportation Consulting. And so we're a consultancy based on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo. Originally the target audience was for the island to try to help the island, but we're finding that there's a bigger need in the province. So we've opened ourselves up to the whole entire province of BC. And for me, I opened this consultancy. I founded the consultancy based upon the fact that, as a law enforcement officer with CVSE, I just found that there was a missing link between safety and compliance and what we were doing. And it was all very reactive. It was, stop a truck, do an inspection, write a ticket, but there was nothing in between. You can throw some links on a website as a government entity and just say that you're doing prevention, but it's not engaging. It's not actually helping the carriers. They still have to go and find it for themselves. And the problem that I've found was that they just don't have that time. And so for me, my heart was more in the preventative side. If I can be there helping carriers get into compliance and focus on the business side of things, knowing that they're in compliance, that's a whole other area that they get to not have to focus on, not have to worry about, because they can just focus on being profitable for themselves, for their employees, and for their company itself. So that was really kind of what in my time with CVSE, my heart's always been for helping people, and I found like I was almost contradicting what my passion was and what my heart was. And so that's kind of what sort of led me to do and develop this consultancy. And it's kind of what makes me is that I actually care for these carriers to be successful and their employees and their well-being. And it's not about me making money and being profitable as a business. I actually want to see other people be successful and do it safely. So I think that's what makes me is just, and what our consultancy brings is that we just bring that value of we care. We actually care about the well-being, we're not in it for the dollars. We're in it for actually the safety and benefit of everybody who we serve. So yeah.
Power. Yeah, no, this is exciting, and it's awesome. So something that I often say, in a mindset I really strongly have, is operating within the boundaries of compliance, which is exactly what you just described. And it's nice to know that, when there's someone like yourself who is a subject matter expert that gets, okay, people are busy. And like I went through 2 NSC audits when I had my little trucking company in BC, and that was we're doing our best. And noted like the auditor, she was really nice, and I get everyone has a job to do, but that was our defense, was we are so busy. Where are we supposed to learn this? How are we supposed to know this? And that was even before Google was even a thing. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it is a very fair statement when we say people are busy. So again, I welcome you to obviously this side of the community, but it's super awesome. And then another thing that I like that you said, which I'm a big believer in, is money is the byproduct of value.
Absolutely.
And when you're focused on people because you care about people, and off camera, I liked what you said, your employees' families, their employees' families. That to me is super powerful, because too many people are, if this was my invoice book, they're thinking, what am I billing today? Like that's their train of thought going in to, it's like, okay, well, how do you effectively serve someone when this is your main heartbeat? But it's nice to know that, obviously business, you need to create like revenue and stuff, but money is the byproduct of the value. So it's super powerful.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Absolutely.
So when you first entered the transportation industry, was it through enforcement, or were you involved some way before?
So I kind of started my whole career aimed towards policing. So I went to university, got a degree in criminology. When I was in university, I became a dispatcher with the RCMP. And then as I was dispatching, prior to becoming a dispatcher with the RCMP, I was an auxiliary constable, still am to this day, but that program's kind of dying, sadly. So, my whole focus was policing. And what I found was that I had all this great law enforcement experience as a volunteer, as an auxiliary, and through dispatching, but I never had something where I had to manage my own files and be accountable to my own enforcement practices. And one area that I never really focused on as an auxiliary, I always did general duty. I never focused on traffic. And I'm like, you know what, like I want to focus on traffic. There's a broader area there that needs to be, I need to learn before I can really be competitive in a municipal agency, because I wasn't really, the whole RCMP thing wasn't really my direction. I wanted to go more municipal, but you got to be quite competitive. And so when I had left the RCMP, they had amalgamated, went to a different city. And I was like, okay, well, I need to get a provincial government job. I'm not quite there to be competitive enough for municipal. So I had actually joined the BC government in a different position, just because it was the only thing that was available at the time. And then when CVSE came up, I had it on my radar. And I thought, this is a great opportunity to learn the Motor Vehicle Act, Commercial Transport Act, do my own enforcement, learn a whole different side of things that people don't get to learn. And so it was originally, I was all for it. I was like, this is my position. And sure enough, it posted back to Nanaimo. So I was like, this is perfect for me. So it got me into the transportation industry. What I didn't realize getting in is that how much stuff there was to learn and how interested I was in it. My whole focus had shifted from, the criminal side of policing to there's a lot of really interesting stuff here in a very big industry. And you don't realize how big the trucking industry is until you actually work in the trucking industry. Like this is a very dynamic, very multifaceted industry. And there's a lot of things that need to be in check in order to do this effectively. And so I got really hooked in it. I was like, I could see myself doing this for sure. And I really got involved and really integrated into it in all different areas. And so that's kind of what got me into CVSE itself, was more of an enforcement side. And that's what kind of led me into being a CVSE officer and getting into the transportation industry.
Power. Yeah, there's a lot to learn still. Like some of my mentors were former enforcement, now industry in regards to safety compliance for some major carriers. And they're like, so much to learn.
Yeah.
And you hit it on the head too. Oh yeah. Because what is trucking? Like most people think, like, and I, no disrespect to anyone that doesn't know, but I kind of laugh sometimes when they're like, oh, it's a semi and a trailer. And I'm like, it's a small percentage of trucking. I'm like, go look at actually how you define a commercial vehicle. There's a lot. Landscaping companies.
Oh, absolutely.
And again, each province I get has a different threshold. So I'm way more familiar with Alberta than you are BC, because I think your number's off a little different than ours when you define it. But when I think of an F-350 hauling a little tandem trailer to move a Bobcat, and you put those gross like registered weights combined, I'm like, I would actually look up the definition of what is a commercial vehicle, because there's probably thousands of landscaping companies around that don't identify as that. They just think, well, I'm a landscaping company. That has nothing to do with me. But you're right though. When there's a lot to it, and it's it's nice to know you were hungry and you're still hungry to learn, because a lot of people, I think, could say the opposite. Whoa. Like,
and I think that's important too, because, the training for the position was intense. I mean, I was in Vancouver, so I'm based on the island, right? So I was in Vancouver almost every second week for a whole week, just learning all the dynamics of the Motor Vehicle Act and the Commercial Transport Act and CVSA standards and all. I mean, it was a lot of training. I think I had something like the hotel that we usually stayed at. We had this one that we really liked in New West. I think there was something like 60 something nights worth of stay. And that was broken up over like a year. So you're going for a week here, come back for a week, go for another week, come back and it was really intense training. But you realize just how, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg. You get to, from there, then you self-develop your skills and you hone it even more, right? So what really got me is when we did our first course was weights and dimensions. And it was literally just going through the Commercial Transport Act and the Commercial Transport Manual. And it's a small piece of what commercial transport's all about in BC, but it took a week of like going through this step by step. And then you're realizing like there's a lot to this. And like, oh yeah, well, this is your first course and you've got like 12 more to do. I'm just like, whoa, my gosh, there's a lot to learn here. So, but the thing is, even now as a consultant, like I'm still always making sure I'm focusing. I have a colleague down in the States, or a connection down the States, and I was just learning all about CFR and just like, how to figure out some of the things that are in there and what sections they focus on and just building that repertoire, because they have a whole different thing. And some of my clients are, they go down into the States. And so I really want to know what is that they do. But as an officer, I didn't have to worry about that stuff. Didn't matter, right? I just focused on BC. And so, you're always learning. And I think that's the most important thing of being a consultant, is that you don't just think because you have the knowledge and you help clients that you can stay steady in that and that, because the industry is always changing, and you need to be on top of that. You need to be ready to evolve with that and help your clients to evolve as well. So lots of training all the time.
Yeah, it's fun too when you go like, this is like, say, textbook textbook knowledge, and then it's practical knowledge, and you're actually measuring your brake, or you're actually listening to an audible air leak versus reading it. Yeah, it can be overwhelming too, because it's nice when you take a course, you're confident, you pass, but then you're thrown into the field and you're like, it's strenuous on like law enforcement, it's strenuous on safety. And then, you have like some drivers that take it super seriously, and it's like, oh, you're teaching me right now. Okay. But yeah, that would be a fun balance to navigate for sure.
For sure.
Well, being so close to the border too, talking about USDOT and very different rules, and
absolutely,
similar mindset for sure. But making sure that you're safe here, you're compliant here, you cross the border, you have nothing. Okay, we got some, because nuclear verdicts are scary down there. So
for sure.
But no, that's awesome. So in your journey, I like that you've been kind of sharing pieces. I like pieces because then you can really bite onto that. So I know our listeners are grateful for that. But through your journey as enforcement, you started off as is that the right term? You started off as an officer, and then you worked your way up as an inspector and an auditor. Or can you walk us through that journey?
Yeah. So it's there are different areas within CVSE. So when I joined CVSE, I joined as a commercial transport enforcement officer, which is anybody who is both scale bound and portable is considered it's called a CTO. And so my role was, I was a CTO based out of Parksville Scale. So I had a dual purpose. I'd be in the scale for a bit, then I'd be on the road doing roadside enforcement and traffic stops and all that kind of stuff. And so it was a dual thing. I did that for probably a good majority of my career with CVSE. And then from there, the position for carrier safety inspector came up, which is it's the same, all the same authorities and same mandate, but you change from being scale-based and road-based to in the office doing investigations, audits, carrier compliance reviews, all that kind of stuff. So it becomes more carrier-based. It's all about carrier safety. So you still have the road obligations, you still go do inspections and all that, but your bread and butter is going in and auditing carriers. So it wasn't originally, I didn't have an interest in that when I first started, because I was so heavy about wanting to get my enforcement experience for policing that I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to scale and write tickets and I'm gonna whack. And then as my years progressed, I'm like, like I think that I learned from drivers that, well, there's carrier issues that are causing this. I'm like, well, okay, then I want to focus on the carrier side of things. And then the position came available, had a lot of flexibility. It was very independent, which is more of my mindset. The micromanaging thing wasn't always my favorite thing to be under. I felt myself like I was quite competent to work on my own. And so it felt like a great opportunity and I went for it. And so I did the audits and carrier safety inspector position for some time. And what that gave me was a perspective on how carriers, how their operations work and their hardships and their struggles. And that's when I really started to realize in my own passions and my own drives were not aligned with enforcement anymore. I started to see that, having these conversations with carriers, starting to see how these businesses run. I'm just realizing that at that time that I'm looking at this from a different perspective. And the drivers think the carrier is a problem. The carriers say, no, the drivers are the problem. And there's that disconnect there. And that disconnect is causing these problems for these carriers. And really it's a simple solution to fix that if you can get somebody who's in there that can effectively change this and make something that structurally works. And the two positions gave me completely different perspectives on industry and what the hardships are from both sides, and bringing them together is kind of what this position allowed me to do, was to kind of bring those together, find the solutions, find the problems they didn't know existed, and get them into compliance. So it was a good journey. Like, it was a good experience. There's certainly a need for enforcement. Don't get me wrong. I have nothing but great things to say about my colleagues, my ex-colleagues. I have lots of RCMP traffic buddies. I love them all. I have lots of respect for them, and they are a required service out there, 100%. But sometimes the cards are stacked against a carrier for things that really are simple solutions that can be easily remedied. And that's where I found from my experience that well-rounded experience I gained there really showed me the whole realm of what can be fixed. And so, it was a great opportunity. I enjoyed my time with CVSE, and I definitely have no regrets having done it, because it made me the competent person I am today to do what I do. So
powerful. Yeah, it's nice when I call it the Google Earth view, where you can see all spectrums, all creeks, all highs, all lows. And I remember, because of my history, I was a driver for about the first half of my career, and I was terrified to cross the scale. A lot of it was just, I had no idea. And some of it was, I would say more so people I knew than myself being in a position where they were told, if you don't drive, someone else will. And from a carrier standpoint, when I used to own a small little trucking outfit, I never forced anyone, thankfully. Like in hindsight, I've always been an empathetic leader. So I never forced someone to do something unsafe. If something was broken, I didn't understand what major minor defect was. I didn't understand any of that. I just looked at it as, can you still safely deliver this piece of equipment? Because that was our mindset. But I think the big disconnects too is a driver thinks, and this is just an example, it's not the example, but it's an example of, if I don't do it, I'm either going to be in the black book or I'm the bad dog or whatever now. And maybe I get bad runs or maybe I get fired. And if a carrier's thinking, I have these bills to pay and I have these bills to pay, which bill it makes most sense for me to pay? Staying in business operationally or fixing a break? When they're and again, the lack of knowledge. So I'm not excusing it. I can get that side of it. And over the last second half of my career, I've built some really strong relationships with some super good law enforcement where I'm like, okay, I don't need to be afraid of you because we're all human. And I remember the first time I was taken to a scale with it was a former employer, and my old boss was incredible. And he was just like, have you ever been to a scale? I'm like, why would I go there? He's like, so he walks me through this journey. I remember sweating at before we went in, like, what am I going to say? He's like, ask him a question. But then once you realize we're all human and we all have a common goal, it's like, okay. And then, I like your approach though, where you identified things where it's a simple fix. It's a tweak of this. We'll implement this. Don't ever do this. I think that's a really wise approach, especially through your experience. So
absolutely. And it's funny you say it because I had a lot, like probably hundreds and hundreds of conversations. I mean, I've had thousands of them with truckers, right? And that was a theme I saw consistently, was when talking to a driver and you do an inspection, it's just a bad inspection, right? It just is what it is. And you're just talking to the guy or gal and saying, hey, listen, like, this isn't just good. Like, this is not a good inspection at all. And many times the response was, you know what, like, if I don't do this, I don't get paid, I lose my job. I'm like, well, you have the right to refuse work. He's like, but I understood it talking to these people, like, you have the right, but exercising that right will have consequence for sure, right? Because carriers don't have time for that. And that's what kind of led to the carrier thing. It's like the carriers don't have time for that side of safety because they're so busy that there's a need there because if you can fill that void, you fill that void of safety. Now you have, like you're talking about going through the scales, you have truckers that can now go through the scales feeling confident that even if they get stopped, there's not going to be a problem, right? That they know that things are good, that they know the company is investing in that safety. And one thing I talk to a lot of carriers about is, talking to a lot of drivers, it's like, well, what's your biggest concern? And like, well, when I'm going through the scales, there's a bit of a pucker effect. It's like, it's like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to get stopped? Is it going to be me? They don't want to see the red light. Like, it's their biggest fear of driving every day. The biggest fear is going to the scale, being stopped, getting hammered with a ticket, being put out of service, and so for me, when I approach it, it's like, if you can give your drivers that confidence that they can see you investing in the safety and compliance, whether it's, me coming in and doing, preventative maintenance inspections on a fleet of vehicles and making sure that all the defects that need to be fixed legislatively are fixed, that those guys can go to the scale, or girls can go to the scales knowing that those vehicles are safe and nothing's going to happen. Then they can sit there confidently in an hour and a half long inspection and know that it's going to be okay. And that carrier can have that same confidence. The trucks are running for the day and they know those trucks are going to be fine. And that's a big stress to alleviate off of a carrier and a company just trying to make a living and trying to function. And I think a lot of people, when they realize that that's what a consultant can bring to a company, they realize the value of what a consultant can bring, right? It's not like they see a little bit of a cost at the hop and they go, oh, well, what am I going to get out of this? Well, let me tell you, it may be a cost. Here's your negative. It costs a little bit of money. Here's the positives. It's a trickle down from trucker or the vehicle to the driver to how law enforcement looks at your company now, because they're inspecting, you're getting passes. It changes the whole picture of your company. And that's what I saw working through my years in both roles, was that there's these negative things that companies just don't see from that perspective because they're so busy at this, or the drivers don't see because they're so busy trying to make sure that they're doing good work for their employers, right? So it gave me a really good perspective of all that and allows me to bring a really good understanding to this position. So yeah, it was a great opportunity, 100%.
Totally. Yeah. That's the value again of Google Earth, because you can see, like, one big concern is fuel. So fuel consumption costs. One big concern is insurance costs. Obviously carrier compliance, roadside inspections, vehicle, all of these things. And it's like cost savings by spending a little bit up front. Yes, there's a cost to your fee. Makes sense. There's a cost to maintaining safe vehicles. Makes sense. But when they think from a cost perspective, when you think of the trickle effect, that's in the carrier's favor, because the higher the risk rating, the higher the insurance premiums, the more times being pulled over, like even the cost, like I love Way to Go. And I really believe in the mentality of Way to Go, because the cost it takes basically just in fuel consumption, if you have 5 vehicles that go through 5 inspections a month, so that's 5 hours of idle time, that idle time fuel burn cost is so much more money than fixing the brake. But again, it's seeing, I like your perspective because it's Google Earth and it's, okay, this, oops, sorry, my pen, but this helps this, this helps this. At the end of the day, driver retention is another big issue. And when someone feels safe, like, do you know this is tied down properly? And they're like, or of course it's tied down properly. Like, I made sure, like, this doesn't move, that, like, that difference. You mentioned weights and dimensions, and like, there's a lot to it. So I love the Google Earth mentality, because you're able to say, from a carrier's perspective, here, you just sit here and I will direct you in all these directions. And I will show you that operating within the boundaries of compliance creates more revenue for you, and driver retention and all of those. Driver
retention, absolutely. Retention is a huge thing too, right? You keep your truckers happy, and they know that you're investing in their safety and making sure that you're doing your part. It goes a long way, right? A lot of guys, if they see that, they'll be happier. A lot of guys just want to make money. They want to drive. They know their job. They're professional drivers. They just want to go and make their money and do it safely. 95% of the drivers out there do not want to operate unsafely. They don't. But sometimes their hands are tied, and sometimes carriers' hands are tied. And, you know, like, it really is. It ends up being this negative impression that the driver has on the carrier because they don't understand. And then the carrier has a negative impression on the drivers because they don't understand. And when you tie those together and fix it and give it a smooth sort of relationship between the two, it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful.
Totally agree. Yeah, no, I agree. So when you were auditing carriers, would you see negative trends, like a consistent, like 20% of carriers didn't have this policy in place, 10% of carriers didn't understand what this piece of legislation meant, anything like that?
Yeah, you know, for me, I found a lot of the biggest thing I found with carriers was document retention, just because there's a lot. So if a carrier is running logs, they know that they have to retain their logs. Like, they know they have to retain their pre-trips. They know this kind of stuff, but they don't know about the other sides of Division 37 and what's required. You know, the driver's abstracts, the supporting documentation, every piece of a mechanical inspection, any receipt. A good solid safety plan and preventive maintenance plan. A lot of carriers don't have a preventive maintenance plan. They're like, my preventive maintenance plan is I get a CVIP every 6 months, you know? And it's like, well, that's not a preventive maintenance plan. You know, like, but they've got mechanics. Like, some of these guys, they have mechanics on, they're hired mechanics, but the mechanics are reactive to what the drivers say. Hey, the truck's doing this. Can you fix it? Okay, good. And then they're sitting there for a couple of days cleaning out the shop. Well, for instance, you know, I come in for one of my clients every couple of months and I inspect their fleet. And sure enough, almost every single time I find things that the mechanics don't see, because mechanics are exceptional tradespeople. Like, I couldn't go in and, you know, rebuild a Kenworth engine. Couldn't do it, right? But I can tell you that if I go and inspect that vehicle, I'll tell you that airline's out of service. I'll tell you that bolt, you just tighten it when you can. That this thing, you know, that's going to actually put you out completely. This is a critical defect. So my role is to bring in those things and let the mechanics know what to fix so that they can work on those. And that's a value that allows that carrier to let their mechanics that they're paying for focus on that. Otherwise, you know, you pay for another mechanic on staff to do that. Well, now all of a sudden that cost is huge. And when you look at that, then the cost for a consultant to do that, it actually becomes a cost savings service to bring in, because my focus is to find these things specifically, not to fix them, not to find the parts and pull the engine apart and do that. My job is to tell you, this is what's going to be safe. This will get you parked. this will probably get you a 3-day notice and order. This. Here's what you should fix to be legal. And having that knowledge for a carrier to have that ability to get the mechanics to fix that stuff takes a huge weight off their shoulders, because now they know, hey, that vehicle for the next 2 months, I've got other things that are going to be fine. Now it gets a CVIP, and that CVIP gets a pass, yes. Right? And then now all of a sudden CVSE runs that vehicle and they say, oh, pass. Oh, this vehicle, they have a really good, it changes the perception of law enforcement against that carrier. And that has that trickle down effect. And so that's what I was finding as a CSI, is that, you know, some of these little documents, the document retention thing was the biggest thing, and the preventive maintenance plan was a consistent thing. And driver files were almost always the yearly abstracts. They weren't doing it because they have way too much stuff to worry about. Like they really do, right?
Yes.
And so it was really more minor things that collectively created problems for the carriers during audits. And that was the one thing that I really saw as an auditor, was that I felt like the cards were really stacked against a carrier to be perfect. So I had one company that I audited. They had one truck, one trailer, one driver, and they were licensed for under 8,200 kilos. So they didn't need to do pre-trips. They didn't need logbooks. They were operating, you know, only on the island. And so it was very small, like one driver, one truck, one trailer. Well, they failed their audit because they didn't have that one driver's abstract. Well, that one driver has a bigger scoring percentage and for that specific standard, that they missed a box 2 notice and order paperwork. They didn't have it on file. That has a bigger percentage on that scoring standard. So minor things, really one piece of paper, led to demerits on that standard. Well, that standard means so much more because it's only one vehicle. Right. And that's one thing that I saw, was the document retention, which has such a big impact on these audits, was a consistent theme that I saw. And it was like you're losing points for things that are minute, that are oversight, that you would normally, I'm sure, have if you had somebody who could focus on this for you.
Yes.
And so that was a big thing. You know, you see log pages that are out, and ELDs are going to change, you know, correct a lot of that for companies, which is, you know, good. You're still going to find them, you know, in people are just going to drive. They will, like, they're going to just push the red button, say thanks, and keep driving. So you're going to find that in audits for sure. But, you know, finding those and addressing those when they come up is an obligation too. And if somebody can do that for you as well, like those things were more just regular day-to-day. You see those. Yeah, you're always going to see log pages that are, for the most part, a company in an audit's going to have a log page or two that's out. Yes. It's just going to happen. But it wasn't the consistent thing that you'd find from driver to driver day to day. It was, you know, this thing's missing, that thing's missing, and they're the simple documents that people don't even know they have to retain. So that was my biggest, I'd say my two biggest things was document retention and the preventive maintenance program that they had.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So with Freight Right Transportation Consulting, are a lot of your services enabling, well, I guess when a carrier works with you specifically, it's to improve, it's to check every box, ensure all of the required documentation is in place so preventive maintenance exists. And what other things do you offer?
So we have a wide range of services that we offer. There's preventative based consulting, so things like preventive maintenance inspections, a lot of the document retention stuff I was talking about. So some of our clients, they hand that stuff off to us. So we keep track of their insurance, their CVIPs, make sure the vehicles are getting inspected. We make sure that their document files for the drivers are being properly retained. We take care of all the logbooks, all the document retention stuff, make sure their safety plan, their preventive maintenance plan are effective. If not, we rebuild it for them, make sure they're doing those things properly. So that's a big service of ours, is we, on a monthly basis, we will get the documents from the carriers, we'll file them to make sure that everything's good. We'll go through the logbooks, make sure there's nothing that needs to be addressed. If there is something that needs to be addressed, then we'll help them work through their progressive disciplinary plan that they have to have, or develop that for them if they need. So a lot of these things that when somebody starts a company, they're like, I want to get my NSC and get going. And then they start to get busy, like, oh my gosh, I have a lot of business. Like I'm doing really well. But when you have a lot of business, you have a lot more opportunity to get stopped and get tickets. And all of a sudden an audit comes up And they're like, okay, well, here's what I have. And it's, some fuel receipts and a couple of documents.
I was
And
there, yes.
yeah, exactly, right. And then they fail miserably. Well, that's a rabbit hole then that they start going down, because now it's like, okay, now you're on our radar and we're going to re-audit you. And here's all the things that you need to fix. Go. And they're like, well, I still have to run a business,
Yes.
right? I don't know how to fix this stuff. And so that was a big service of ours, is that doing that NSC document retention. So that usually, these things fall from what is normally the first piece of what we do. So originally I talked to a carrier. If they want to connect with me, I'll go in and do a free consultation. I'll sit down and say, okay, tell me what you think, or how you think your business functions. And so I'll get an understanding from the carrier's perspective in terms of how well they think they're functioning. And one question I'll always ask is, how would you rate your compliance level? And a lot of the times I hear, I think we're doing okay. And as soon as I hear that, I'm like, if you were confident, you wouldn't say I think, you would say, I know we're fine. And as soon as you hear I think, there's a need for me. And it's not a business thing, but a confident carrier should be able to say, we are good, 100%. And that's what I want to see. When I go into a carrier and I help them out, I want to walk out of there after helping that client in that moment, in that carrier or in that compliance review, and have them feel confident in knowing that the plan of attack from that review is going to get them there. So a lot of times I do that review, go in, I check over, the preventive maintenance program, how I'll observe drivers. There's sometimes they'll ask me to do spot checks. I'll go in, check the document retention and how things are set up. Look over their preventive maintenance program and their safety plan, all sorts of things. Do an overall assessment of the carrier's safety practices, and then come back to them with a report showing where there's room for change and where they're doing well. And when they see that results of that and say, hey, listen, this is the stuff that you're going to be looked at in an audit, they realize that there's a big need there. And that will usually lead to either a preventive maintenance program implementation by us or the document retention service. But it also creates an opportunity for other things that we offer too, like possibly there's some retraining or some training opportunities there. Possibly there's some hiring standard changes, possibly some changes in protocols and policies. There's a wide range of things that we do based upon that assessment. And it also allows us to build a relationship. So for us, now that relationship's there, so if an audit does happen, guess what? You contact me, I'm there for you. We'll get you through this. We'll make sure that things are good. We'll make sure that you're given the right documents that you need to, and make sure that you can get through this thing as smoothly as possible. As well, there's other things that offer from that as well. So you build that relationship. Now, if there's anything that happens to be in court, where they need a good subject matter expert who can go in as an expert witness, or to help out the drivers for something that not necessarily they should have gotten. I've been there. I was on the side of the enforcement officer. I know some of the ways that can be, some conversations that can be had, and how to actually approach this. There's a lot of tickets that get written that shouldn't be getting written, right? And so that allows us to help the carrier out from a big holistic perspective, and really help the carrier focus on the things they need to focus on. So
yeah. I love the snapshot. This is where you're good. This is where you need some work.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I love the relationship side too, because
yeah.
do you know the name Bob Burge, the Go-Giver?
It sounds familiar.
Super, super good guy. And he'll say things like, people will do business with those they like, they know, and they trust. And when you're able to say, I'm neutral, where are you at? And show them where they're at based off of your expertise, build the relationship, show them, I actually care about your success and I can help you get there. Huge. And I really admire that, because as we were saying before, there's a lot of consultants that, and no shade to them, different business practice, that's not their approach.
No.
And that really aligns with my values and my way of thinking too, where I'm like, we need to help, not just give a bill. And I think, your approach is super impactful, and it's nice that it's holistic. It's really full circle. Like, how are your drivers dealing with this situation, or how are your files in this situation? And knowing, okay, if you ever go through an audit, I will be right there with you. Like that's a huge
Absolutely.
peace of mind for especially smaller carriers, where a lot of our industry is based out of smaller carriers, under 10 commercial vehicles kind of thing, where
Yeah,
they're busy and they just want to
absolutely.
know, I got Trevor. It's all good. He's my guy. It's
There
all
you
good.
go.
And
Yeah,
yeah, I really respect that. And
thank
I
you.
like the term, I'll sing it from the mountaintops, because
Yeah,
it's nice to know,
yeah,
because part of our mission too, by introducing industry leaders to industry, is to do that, is to create that change.
yeah,
And part of the change is peace of mind and
absolutely.
having confidence. If your driver's 40 years in and he knows a heck of a lot more than you do because your business is 5 years old, you can be like, hold on, driver, 1 second. I really respect what you're saying, but let's get Trevor involved in this conversation just to
Yeah,
make sure.
yeah.
And yeah, I think that's super smart. Really, really good direction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. So on our first call, you mentioned something. Well, I love the word proactive, and you're proactive with carriers, and that's really a mindset of yours. Can you kind of dive into that mindset of the proactive in compliance?
Yeah. So, what I found as an enforcement officer is that a lot of things were reactive. So the officer would react to a defect or something they saw or some infraction or violation. And then that vehicle would be stopped. And then the company would react by sending out a mechanic or sending out another driver, or reacting by sending out somebody else to offload that truck or whatever the case. It was very, very reactive. And the problem with reactive is reactive causes stress, reactive costs money, and reactive is not an effective way to operate. You can't operate under the reaction. So a lot of people say, well, I'll deal with it when it happens. But then when it happens, your world falls apart and it costs you a lot of money. So looking at things from a reactive side, it's not a beneficial way of operating. So when I talk about being proactive, it's all about looking at what a carrier can fix now and do ongoing to reduce or eliminate those reactive things. So that's essentially where like preventive maintenance comes in. Preventive maintenance is a proactive approach to maintaining fleet, but it seldom happens in carriers because they focus on making the money, and they know they have mechanics to fix the problems. And their proactive approach is to do the CVIPs that are required every 6 months. Well, that's not proactive, that's law, right? Like that's just, you have to do that. Yes. So the proactive approach is like having someone like myself come in and be like, okay, Trevor's going to inspect these vehicles, once every 2 months. And then next month he's going to inspect a different set of 8 vehicles, right? It's a small investment now, but it's a proactive approach to safety. And looking at how a company functions, or looking at how their practices are in terms of whether it be their policies or some of their pre-trip standards or whatever, some of them have not been necessarily taught or coached the proper way to do things preventatively. It's just been, oh, okay, well, I'm going to quickly do a walk around, kick my tires a bit, and away I go. And it's a reactive thing in the end when that tire fails and that truck swerves, goes off the road, and now there's a huge accident that's shut down the highway. So it's going into a carrier, doing that assessment and finding those proactive ways to avoid those reactive situations. And that's a big belief of mine, is that, you can be all reactive as you want. You can let safety sit stagnant from month to month to month and just wait for something to happen, or you can be proactive about it and constantly assess it, reassess it, be on top of it, be ahead of it, and be ready for it should something come, and it doesn't become such a huge thing to deal with. Same with like the document stuff that we do, document retention stuff. You can't stop drivers from getting tickets. You can do your best, but things can happen. But now all of a sudden you get investigated by CVSE, and a carrier safety inspector comes in and says, hey, I want to see this, this, and this. And you don't have that. That now prompts a review or an audit or something bigger. But if you can go in and a carrier safety inspector goes in and says, hey, I want to see this, this, and this, and you're like, yep, here it is, here it is, here it is. That right there looks so much better for a carrier, that you have your stuff in order, that inspector, and I know this firsthand, is going to look at the situation and be like, wow, you guys actually are doing this, and this is a one-off. Yes. I did an investigation on a fatality that happened, and I got called in, got brought into it, and the AVI had done his part in investigating it, and it was actually being handled by a police agency. And they brought me in, and I went to the company and I said, okay, I need to see this, this, and this for the driver. Well, I had to wait 3 days because I had to go to this person out in Kamloops, who then had to talk to somebody in Alberta, who then had, and it's like, well, no, that's not how this is supposed to happen, right? Like, I should not be waiting if I have to go in. And that's a perception that, officers, they go there, they want to see the stuff they're supposed to have. And if you don't have it, it prompts something. Okay, what else is wrong here?
Yes.
We're being proactive on that. It just has that trickle down effect that just creates a great overall perception from the enforcement bodies and even other carriers, right? Like, if you're not getting stopped, you're not having problems, people take notice of that, right? You drive past the scale and you see the same company parked at the scale. It doesn't give you the best, the best perception on that company, right? It's not going to give them, not going to look very good for them, as opposed to if you see them keep moving, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Huge. Yeah. And I love a lot of that, because I think the best part about being proactive is there's accountability.
Yeah.
And in a positive way. So there's opportunity to celebrate versus opportunity to discipline. And when I'm a massive believer in, let's run our ships, or we'll be the captain of our ships with empathy and not tyranny. Yep. And when you're accountable in a positive sense and you're celebrated for the success of that, where you're right, tickets are going to happen, and it could be an oversight, it could be a distraction. There's lots of different things. Okay. But yeah, when you're face to face and you're confident, there's no sweat. There's very much like, here you go. Here absolutely. You go. And that really, I think that changes the perspective. And right now in our day and age, social and brand awareness is so huge too. And it's another oversight that I see where, like, I live, 12 minutes or, well, maybe a little longer, 12 minutes away from a major scale out in Balzac, Alberta here. I don't know if it's 1,000 commercial vehicles a day or some super high number. And there's always trucks parked there, like, that are out of service, which I get, things happen. But I'm like, okay, so if I notice that, how many people notice that vehicle sitting there? And if they have no understanding of, like, commercial vehicles and enforcement, nothing, they're just like, well, that looks like law enforcement and that thing's parked, so they probably did something bad. Yep. Huge. Absolutely. And people are taking pictures, posting it on social. So there's a massive trickle effect that, again, when you're proactive, I really like that mindset. So I really support that, because really you're keeping your customers happy, you're keeping your drivers happy, you're keeping yourselves happy. But that's super awesome. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway right now for our episode 2, because a lot of our listeners are drivers and carriers, is be proactive. And absolutely, professional drivers, you can be proactive too by submitting your paperwork on time. And there's a lot to it, but I really respect that. I appreciate that very much. So I'm a massive believer too in something called building a legacy every day. So when you leave, or when you enter a room, you interact with people, you leave a room, how do people remember you for? And I like knowing that, especially as, like, small entrepreneurs. Obviously we're smaller businesses. What's your, I guess, focus, if you want to talk short-term and long-term, but what legacy are you hoping to leave in the industry?
When I was in enforcement, I left a pretty good legacy on the island in terms of as an enforcement officer. So I was always, without sounding by any means, cocky or like that, I always had a reputation in the industry of being the good one. They called me the good guy. So I actually had many times I stop a vehicle, another driver would go by, I'm like, oh, don't worry, he's the good one, like, oh, thanks, And so I took a lot of pride in just using discretion where I could. Listen, I have a job to do as an enforcement officer. I have to put this out. Policy says I have to write you a ticket, but you know what? I'll help you out with it. I'm not going to hammer you with everything I can. I'm not going to take food off your plate here. Like, I'm going to do my job, but I'm also going to help you learn from this and do yours, and not have to take a loan out for this, right? And so I think a lot of people respected that. And for me, going into this, I want to build that same reputation in this consultancy. So if you bring Trevor in, you're going to get a service, it's going to be good, it's going to find the problems, and it's going to make you safer. And for the short term, and I've found that with my clients already, I think I've actually, I'd say probably the last 3 clients I've talked to have all said, oh yeah, we've told our buddies about you, and they're going to come too. And it's just been because I've had that relationship with these people. They know they can trust what I'm trying to achieve here. Yes. And that legacy is what I'm hoping for this. I want people to realize that I am not in this to get rich. This isn't a, get what you can out of all these carriers and away you go. And I think that sometimes a lot of consultancies run as a business that way. They're a business. They're not a service. They're a business. And yes, you have a business side that you have to focus on. You have to be able to pay your bills. You have to be able to, pay your accountant and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you're here to provide a service to other people. And I want that to be the legacy of this consultancy, that, you know what, when you hire FreightRight, you're going to get a value added service, and you know it's going to be something that is going to increase the value of your business, so that they're getting something great out of it, and that they're going to have that good relationship. When I go into a free consultation, I'm not sitting at this side of the table and they're at this side of the table. We're side by side, because you know what? This is a partnership. This is me working with you. This isn't me working, I'm working for you, but it's not like I'm here and you're there, and when this is done, see you later, and I'll see you the next time you get pinched. It's no, like we are in this as a partnership. And my role here is to help you to do things effectively. And I just want that to be the legacy of this, is that Trevor and FreightRight Consulting are here so that when you hire them, when you know that you're going to bring them in, that they're going to increase the value, and it's going to increase your ability to do things safer. And if I can spread that across the province, and that's kind of the goal, is I want to go to areas that don't have that kind of service available. So for instance, probably sometime in the next couple of months, I'll probably be taking a trip up north to like Dawson Creek, Fort St. John, Prince George, Vanderhoof, up in that area, because there's a big need up there for somebody in that area. The conditions are snowy, it's a different kind of trucking up there as opposed to the lower mainland of Vancouver Island. And up there themselves, they have different situations. And there's a couple CSIs that audit up there. So it doesn't take much for a carrier up there to get thrown into an audit or find themselves in a sticky situation, and they have nobody to turn to except for the results of the audit. And for me, the legacy of this is I'd like to see this consultancy become the go-to for the province. You know what? Like if you have a problem, you go to FreightRight and they'll help you out. If you want to be safe and in compliance, you go to FreightRight. And my vision for this is to grow to something big. I'd like to see this become a huge service for the industry, and I'd like to grow out east and become a big. Actually, to be honest, I'd like to grow a big consultancy with different areas of focus. For us, we focus on transportation, but I've found through this that there are other areas in other industries that need the same service. And for us, we would like to just remain focused on trucking and focus on industry throughout BC, and just be the go-to for anybody that they can know that you have problems, you call FreightRight, and you'll be in compliance and good to go, and you'll get a service and a relationship out of it. So
power. Yeah, that's huge. And I love the community factor and the people factor. And yeah, there's some really good people doing some really good things in different sectors. And again, when you get tunnel vision on, and if you're a carrier and you're thinking NSC, okay, well, what about health and safety? Or what about human resources? Or what about disability management? Like there's a lot of the overlapping, and it's similar language, different requirement, where, it's like, okay, but I really support your goal and your mission. And I'm super stoked that I get to be part of it, because it really aligns with our overall goal too, where we're introducing leaders to industry to create a change. And it's leaders just like yourself, where you are creating the change, where I'm like, man, let's connect some dots. There's some super good people to introduce you to. And I'm hyped. And I think today's episode has been really good too, because I like humility. And I think when you have a really strong reputation of, oh, he's the good guy, like that's something that, like, that's a badge of honor. Like that's huge. Is.
And I wore it like that too. Like I was called out a lot for, they joke around about it in law enforcement, like, oh, you were soft on him, right? And it's like, well, no, I'm just an empathetic person. Like I get it. I get that, for me, I'm going to be honest. I'm not crawling under my truck, checking my brakes every single day in the pouring down rain at 4 a.m. I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm just honest enough with myself. Should that be something that gets addressed somewhere in the week by a mechanic in a shop or something? So they need to be checked. They need to. But let's be honest, it's not always going to happen. So if that person has one breakout, well, could the slack be off, right? Like, did they go under and check? Who knows? But am I going to go and now find everything I can to throw at a company or a driver? Well, no, I get that. I understood the industry. And I think people picked up on that. The drivers picked up on it. The carriers did. I wasn't just there. I got the badge. I've got the flash. I'm in control. I'm going to write you. I didn't take that approach. It was, you know what, like, I understand industry. I understand the hardships and the stresses. I understand what your day-to-day is. And I think that really stuck with people. So when I would get that from people that, you know, he's the good one, I really did appreciate it. And when I got a negative that people didn't understand, it kind of hit me. And one of the people I actually pulled over, he had a lot of problems. And you know, he had a thing against CVSE, and right off the hop, every time I'd interact with him, it was a yelling match. He was right at me. And, you know, I'd have to take that authoritative stance, and I'd be like, okay, let's go to the scale, let's do an inspection, and this is what it's going to be, so be it. But I talked to him that one of the last times that I had gone to court with him, and I talked to him outside, said, you know what, like, what's going on here? Like, what is this interaction? Because I have nothing against you at all. I'm just doing my job. And I let him vent. And he had a whole bunch of previous situations with other officers that just treated him poorly. And my whole thing with him was, you know what, like, my overall goal is for you to be in compliance, so I don't have to worry about you. You know what, like, I'm in this to try to help you. It may not seem like it, but when you're getting told 3 times to do something and you don't do it, a ticket comes. You have to understand that and expect that, right? And you know, it ended up being that he understood that I understood his situation, and he understood that I just had a job to do. And we actually built a relationship to the point where he's now one of my clients, right? But,
Nice.
but you know, because he knows he can try. He
Yes.
understood, like, he understood that I got it, right? And he's a really good guy. He does a lot of stuff for the community. But when you're looking at it from an enforcement perspective, he doesn't look very good. Well, he just didn't understand what to do. Yes. Right? He didn't understand how to be in compliance, how to manage it. And now he runs a very profitable business, and he's in compliance, and he can focus on that, you know, driving the profits and running the business. And so yeah, those kind of things I really took with me, and I carry those with me going into this, because I know that what I'm doing is effective, and it will be effective as it grows. And from all the negative stuff I have heard, that's more of a, it's default to be mad at enforcement. It is. Something goes wrong, you just default to being mad at the enforcement agency stopping you from doing that. But the people who understood what I was doing and why I had to do it, and then built that relationship and gave that validation that they understood and that I was the good one, I carry that into this for sure, because I just know that that reputation's there already, and people get it and trust that what I'm doing is to their benefit. So yeah, like I said, wore it as a badge of honor for sure.
Yeah, I literally shook my head so much I'm dizzy, because I'm like, yeah. And I'm a massive believer of leading with empathy, and I can tell that's who you are. That's how you live your enforcement life, as well as Absolutely. Now in the consulting space. And I think that
for sure,
yeah, that's a powerful legacy. So no, I appreciate that. So how can people learn more about Freight Rights, transportation consulting, and were there any kind of final thoughts you'd like to share as we just come to a close today?
Yeah, they can, I mean, all my information's available on freightright.ca. So that's our website, freightright.ca, spelled, you know, normal spelling, Freight Right, no hyphens, no spaces. Yeah, and everything you want to find out about us, about me, about the services we offer, it's all on there. You know, we're growing as a consultancy, and even as it is now, I just recently talked to my wife. She's going to be leaving her government job because she's gonna take on the administrative document retention stuff of the consultancy, because it's just growing. And so, you know, we're slowly adding more people because there is this need, and we want to be available to all people in BC. So no matter where you are in BC, no matter what your situation might be, we can set up a free consultation through Zoom or over the phone or in person. No area in BC is too far away from us that we can't offer some service to you and set up something like that. A lot of stuff we can do is virtual. It can be sent through the mail. You know, you just put in a mail slot and mail it to us at the end of the month, right? And we take care of the rest of it. So, you know, we really want to help out all of BC. And so don't feel like because we're based in Nanaimo that there is not a service, there's no means to reach out to us, because our area of focus is all of BC, and we're going to help all of BC. So go to our website, freightright.ca, check us out. We've got all the information about me, about the consultancy, about our vision, about all the services are on there. And then, yeah, just, you know, feel free to reach out. I'm here for people. I'm happy to have conversations and do what I can. And if yeah, if there's a need, then great. If it's not right now, then we'll make contact, and we'll figure out problems as they come up, and approach them down the line. So I'm just happy to be in this, and the best decision I ever made was to get out of that side of things, and come onto this side to help carriers, because it's been very rewarding. I sleep really well at night knowing that, you know, I'm making a difference, and the trickle down effect of what we do in terms of, you know, carriers and their drivers and drivers' families, and their clients. And it's just a huge trickle down effect that, you know, you're having an effect not just on that one person in their business, but you know that trickle down effect goes down and down and down. And that's one thing I take away, is that you know, what we can do for a company and is very, very broad. And you know, a phone consultation, an in-person consultation, it's no obligation, but it can change your business 100% with a simple phone call or a chat. So yeah, freightright.ca, come check us out, and we're available. So we're here for you.
Huge, man. Yeah, freightright.ca. Honestly, Trevor, I got like, yeah, I really appreciate just getting to know you. I'm getting to know, obviously, your business and your goals and your values, but I really get super, like, I like the words jacked and stoked and stuff.
Yeah.
And I get really jacked when I can tell, yeah, there's so much alignment in our values, our way of thinking, how we want to serve, that, yeah, today was awesome. I know our listeners, they're just, yeah, I get a lot of feedback. And when, it's funny, whenever I feel like, man, I'm jacked right now from what someone's saying, that's the same timing that people say, man, that part got me stoked, or I didn't know that. So you added so much value today. And I'm really proud of, yeah, man, I appreciate it. Like, I'm super honored that, obviously, it's a Sunday, we both have families, and just, yeah, knowing we're here to serve our communities and our industry, it is really powerful. And you have my support 1,000%. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
It was awesome. Absolutely.
I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing. It's still growing. It's still fairly early on, but, you know, just getting the feedback from people, there's such a need for somebody who understands it, who has the experience to go in, that I just know that it was a big jump for me to get out of a pretty stable enforcement position. And but I knew there was a need, and honestly, yeah, it's been such an honor to serve people that way, and to just see the change that yeah, I definitely know it's a beautiful thing, and it's just going to be a great thing for so many people. And I appreciate the kind words and the support on it, and the relationship that you and I have built. It's huge. So totally agree.
Yeah, today was awesome. So again, it is freightright.ca. Highly recommend that you connect with Trevor. And of course, I always include all of the information in the show notes, so people will absolutely know where to go. And yeah, today was awesome. So I really appreciate your time. This was great.
And you as well.
Thanks, man. Okay, have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, you too.
Honestly, Trevor, that was awesome. Just I really appreciate that you lead with empathy. You really care about people. And I feel he did a phenomenal job, just really highlighting in a way that I feel all of us can understand, just the requirements and different things that are super important for carriers and professional drivers to understand, but also how you as a person, you're really making a difference in our industry. Honestly, appreciate how authentic you were, sharing your story, as well as your mission and your goals and your legacies and all of it. Honestly, today's episode was awesome. So to everyone listening, I can guarantee you received tons of value today. And if you would like to learn more about Trevor, if you'd like to learn more about FreightRight Transportation Consulting, definitely recommend that you check out their website. So go to www.freightright.ca. As always, I include all of Trevor's contact details in the show notes below, but I highly recommend that you get in contact with him. If you're in the province of British Columbia, does not matter where. So if you're in Prince George, if you're on the island, if you're out by Castlegar, Creston, doesn't matter. If you have questions and concerns about carrier compliance, about what's your responsibility as a professional driver to pre-trip inspections, preventative maintenance, reach out to Trevor. He definitely knows his stuff. But best of all, he really values people, and he really values the impact that he's having on people's lives, and just highly recommend it. So again, thank you so much, Trevor, for your time today. This episode was awesome. And we really just, yeah, I believe that we're going to create a really massive pivotal impact just with what you're doing. It's super awesome. So to all of our dedicated listeners, or if you're a new listener, Honestly, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to our episode. Honestly, it just means the world. And as our following continues to grow, which is really, really encouraging, something that I really believe in is the greater the following, the greater the impact. And it's because of different people like yourself, eager to learn more about just industry leaders' stories and the expertise they bring to the industry. I believe together, collectively, we are going to have a pivotal impact on our industry. So again, thank you so much. If you're listening to this podcast on any major podcast platform, I ask that you subscribe. Simply press the subscribe button. This way, you're notified of all upcoming episodes, and just, yeah, really appreciate it. If you are listening to this on YouTube, same thing. Subscribe, hit the notification bell for the same purpose. You're notified of all upcoming episodes. Lots of really good stuff in the works. And honestly, all of your support just means so much. If you've not yet done so, I highly recommend that you sign up to our monthly newsletter. The newsletter is all about our mission, connecting industry leaders to the industry to help create a pivotal change. So you're going to see things like how-to, advice, did you know, did you wish you knew in advance, to discounts, promos, tons of good stuff. So the link to sign up is below. And again, just highly recommend that you do so. So again, Trevor, thank you so much for taking the time to record this awesome interview with me today. And again, all of our dedicated listeners and our new listeners, thank you so much. Really appreciate all of the support. Okay, well, I hope you have a wonderful day, and let's create a pivotal impact. Bye.